in the retirement age. Police fired tear gas and used water cannon, with nearly 200 people being arrested. President Macron's government pushed the pension legislation through without a final vote due to a lack of cross-party support. The former US President Donald Trump has visited his golf resort in Scotland as building work for a new course begins. At the ceremony, he named the course on the Meany estate after his mother. Stepping off his private jet in Aberdeen earlier on today, Mr Trump told reporters it's great to be home. He last visited in 2018 when he was in office. He's also due to visit his course in Doonbeg on Ireland's west coast. Now, the rock band Aerosmith have announced a farewell tour after more than 5 decades together. The US group of Steven Tyler, Joe Perry, Tom Hamilton, Joey Kramer and Brad Whitford are known for hits including Dream On, Walk This Way and I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. The band has sold more than 150 million records worldwide. In a joint statement, the band said it's not goodbye, it's peace out. Now, England's longest national trail is set to be renamed to commemorate the King's coronation. Next week, the England Coast Path will officially be known as the King Charles III England Coast Path. It'll be 2,700 miles long around the whole of the English coastline. 794 miles of it is also ready. It's going to be fully walkable by the end of next year. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Thank you, Polly. Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. Joining me tonight to go through tomorrow's newspapers, or this morning's if you're watching tomorrow, we have 2 top comedians, Lewis Schaefer and Nick Dixon. Good evening, gentlemen. You well?
I'm well. I'm a little nervous about tonight. The last time we sort of had a little freeze-on together.
Yeah, well, behave yourself tonight and it won't happen again.
I'm looking forward to this now.
Excellent. We're already bristling with energy. It's all going to have to come out. It's all going to have to end up on the desk. The Daily Mail kicks us off with the front pages tonight. We have Britain's rock-solid support for the royals and Nadine Dorris's less than rock-solid support for Meghan at the top there. We have iNews. This can't go on. NHS leaders in despair as strike stalemate hits care backlog. They really should get somebody to try and concise up their headlines a little bit. The Guardian Home Office to acquire fleet of ships to house asylum seekers. We're going back to the days of the Dickensian. The Times call for top civil servant to go amid worst crisis. Express ignoring plea for life and limb. Care just not on. And finally, the Daily Star, E.T. phone Dave. We'll be trying to understand what that means shortly. Those will be your front pages. So, Lewis, you get the first page, the front page of the Daily Mail, Britain's rock-solid support for royals.
Yes, and this is an odd story for me to be talking about because I'm not, first of all, I'm not a monarchist. I'm an American, and we don't believe in that stuff. And I don't really have a sense of how the country is doing. But the headline says, Britain's rock-solid support for the royals. Yeah. Which says that most people support the royals, but at the same time, it was a study done by Lord Ashcroft, who was the Conservative Party donor.
Yes, he was, yeah. And he has been a significant figure within the Tory party. He is a pollster and an opinion, a wind sniffer.
Yeah, so I don't know whether that has anything to do with the outcome of this thing, but it says that people generally like the royal family. They don't like Charles very much. But the most important thing that I got from this is that 67% agreed that the royal family should be scaled down and its costs significantly reduced, which isn't really that positive for the royal family.
They should be scaled down to the tune of one prince, I imagine, in particular.
Yeah, well, we don't know how low it would go, and these are even 58% of the people who are gung-ho pro-monarchy voting. And one more thing, which I found very, very interesting, is that basically 39% could be divided into committed royalists and mainstream monarchists. So the monarchists are 39%, and the people who are against it are 37%.
OK, that's quite tight.
Okay.
I've seen figures today, Nick, that said this was a YouGov poll, actually. It was about a month ago it came out, but it said 55% in favour, about a half, about 25% had no strong opinion, and less than 25% were actually anti. I don't know.
Well, we've got used to questioning YouGov from the COVID era, so I'll just put that there. I mean, not trying to avoid libel, but always question. But yeah, it depends how the question's phrased. Isn't it? The other day there was a poll about young people who are against the monarchy, and that was in a different paper. But now this is we're pro the monarchy, but they phrased the question as the monarchy might sound strange in this day and age, but it works. I mean, that's quite a loaded-sided question, isn't it? I'm sure this does represent the country, though. I'm sure most people are broadly in favour of it. One person said that they need to modernise. I'm like, how much more could they modernise? Charles is already super woke.
It would be a mistake to modernise in exactly the same way that it's been a mistake in your view, I know, for the Church of England to modernise. It does nobody any favours. All you do is end up looking weak, as if you're desperate for support and popularity. Yeah,
well, this is what's happened with our current king. He's appealed to he should appeal to the Greens, but he doesn't really because they're Republicans. Then he should appeal to Conservatives as a monarch, but he doesn't because he's too woke.
I feel very sorry for Charles. I mean, obviously that sounds ridiculous, but in this particular situation he's in, he has basically been as much a part of my life. I'm 58 next week. He has been a part of my life my entire life, every bit as much as the Queen has. Probably more vocal, more high profile in terms of I know all about his views. He has had an entire public career. He's been up, he's been down, he's been through the bumps. He's had a bad marriage and then a good marriage. He's had kids, he's had all kinds of, he's had the entire career. And now, at the age he's at now, he's expected the job starts. Yeah. I mean, it's completely absurd, isn't it?
I think the job starts. The people, this is my impression as an American, people in this country hate strivers. It's not America. America likes somebody who says, I want to be president. And they hate the idea that a king wants to be king. And
he said that.
He wanted to be king his entire life, and that's why they don't like him.
What can I say? One thing, though, what you've just described about Charles also applies to Lewis taking on this job. So right at the end of his life, he's here, so it can happen.
What is the Telegraph running with, Nick?
Telegraph has Sue Gray in Partygate team when Starmer talks began. So this is the fairly questionable thing that she was in secret talks, Sue Gray, with Keir Starmer while working for the team advising the Commons Partygate investigation. So one questions... So a Whitehall source says she had a role in influencing and guiding very sensitive government decisions. And hilariously, her role included giving advice on public appointments, including potential conflicts of interest. Lol. So a massive irony there. So the ultimate conflict of interest, and she was working on conflicts of interest, and now they're saying there'll have to be a cooling-off period of a year, potentially two, before she actually takes the job. And as a senior Conservative has said, it now emerges Sue Gray may have been conniving with Labour. I mean, I would say spying. Which word would you use?
My memory of it is, I would love this to be true, but my memory of it is, if I'm honest, Sue Gray did not hold Johnson's feet to the fire at all, nearly as much as people expected it to. Her report was a bit lame and a bit vague. It was not decisive. He did go in the end, but it absolutely was not.
No, but should she have been doing it?
Cut him to shreds.
The thing is, should she have been in charge of it?
Well,
probably not. And this coming out now reminds me a little bit of the Hunter Biden laptop. It's a bit too late. Boris is gone. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like it was suppressed. We didn't know at the time.
We'll come on to this later, but it's a little bit like the Richard Sharp in, leaving the BBC thing. There is an expectation that people outside of the whole thing seem to have that none of these people meet each other or have anything to do with each other. But that's just not how it works.
And it's so British, the idea of hiring one person to be the judge, jury, and executioner of this entire case. And that's, I think, and you see that with the press hearings and all the hearings. They always hire one person.
Yeah.
They don't need they need democracy. They need a free press. They need two sides of government.
We expect them to meet each other, but should someone who's sympathetic to Labour be working on getting rid of the Conservative Prime Minister? That's
simply able to work for them. I don't know. She's a senior civil servant. I expect
the whole civil service is Labour.
I think that you have to trust the process to some extent. I'm not as inclined to get really angry about this one. I'm perfect. I'm up for it.
I say the process.
You've lived in Brighton too long, Simon. You're just a liberal.
I'm afraid you're grabbing at straws. What about Godfather of AI quits over killer robot fears? That feels like it should be a bit.
That was that was also Sue Gray. She's been involved. she's knee deep in this. I don't know. I didn't look at that one. It's very small.
Dr. Jeffrey Hinton, 75, who was head of the Google Brain research arm, is running for his life, being chased by bionic dogs across acres of woodland.
Yeah,
should be the main story.
I thought that should have been the main story, but we'll have to see if it comes back to us through the main papers. What have we got in The Guardian, Lewis?
The Guardian is the Home Office to acquire fleets of ships to house asylum seekers. They want to have up to 10 disused cruise liners to house asylum seekers.
Who, after all, came over on boats, so they'll be comfortable.
Right, and it is. You mentioned two things are very interesting. You mentioned that this is a repeat to the Dickensian period, but it was an earlier period when America stopped being the place where they could ship prisoners, and they were backing up in boats on the Thames. They were on Thames, and that's when Australia was opened up as a place to dump the criminals.
So Magwitch, in Great Expectations, he was on a ship that was originally bound for America. Then that came to an end, and then they...
I guess so.
They opened up the Australian line.
Yes, you're ahead of me. I didn't read any of that stuff.
Oh, that's the most for the Hulks, they were called.
The Hulks.
That's in, what was it, Gravesend, I think, wasn't it? That Pip grows up in.
And they were kept there.
That series has been hemorrhaging viewers.
But the other thing I think is very interesting is how anybody coming to this country is called an asylum seeker, which means wherever they're coming from, it must be horrible to want to move here. It's such a self-hating thing. Britain is a great country. I can't believe I'm saying that. I don't really believe it, but I know you want to hear it.
I had to go on the BBC Radio 4 this week and defend Britain, and Rishi Sunak's Unicorn Kingdom. People were laughing at it, the idea that anyone would rather live in Cambridge than San Francisco. I'm like, I don't know, I can see, pros and cons. Anyway, what do you got?
Well, they're putting them on these ships. One idea is, you wait till the dead of night, you set sail, you wake up and you're back in France. It's an idea, isn't it? It could work, I'm just saying. They're already on ships.
But they're old cruise ships. They'll have deck quoits, they'll have a pool, There'll be some nice...
There's even an idea of putting them on redundant oil rigs, but that's deemed too dangerous even for this.
But that's not solving the problem. The problem is how do you stop people from wanting to come to the country? And I think the way you do that is basically the way the Tories and the government has been doing it, is trying to make the country as bad as possible.
Yeah, I think they watch you trashing it every night on this show.
Can we just fit it in the Daily Star before we go to an ad break, very quickly?
Nick, no, I want to take time, so it's a very important story. It's ET Phone Dave, and this is people were surveyed, and they want David Attenborough to meet the aliens, presumably put them off, not just coming to the country, but coming to the Earth with a lecture on climate change. And the other people they suggested were Obama and Greta Thunberg. I don't know if this was done in the Guardian offices. And weirdly, Will Smith even did not see the slap. I mean, what is going on? So,
absurd. I think Dave Attenborough will be able to be replicated by AI very quickly if he should, pass away before the aliens come. So we're safe on that one. Well, that is part one. Join us for the next section. We're going to be discussing why the NHS can't cope, why students are chained to their phones, and a cartoonist in trouble over anti-Semitic drawings. That's all in part two. See you shortly.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News. We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. Tonight I am joined by the one and only Lewis Schaefer and the one and only Nick Dixon. So let us continue with our stories, Lewis. We're going to kick off with The Independent. The never-ending story of striking nurses moves into its 100th great year.
Well, this is a wrong one for me because it hits a couple of nerves. The worst nerve, it says that, and this you were talking about the horrible writing, the headline writers that these have.
Yeah.
This one is indecipherable practically. Determined nurses, so that's like a type of nurse, like cancer nurse, IC nurse.
Yeah.
This is determined nurses that the NHS can't cope without, will push ahead with strikes, union leader warns. So Health Secretary Steve Barclay accuses the Royal College of Nursing of premature action. He's offered them 5%, which is ridiculous because the nurses and the nurses' action started this inflationary period, and 5% is nothing. You know, we've all been to the shops, and so they say even if they are given 5%, a lot of these nurses want to strike for more.
So they're determined in the sense that they're determined to strike. The NHS can't cope without them. Well, it will be interesting to see exactly how that manifests then, I suppose.
I like your
people dying.
I like I don't know. I like your idea of a determined nurse as a nurse that sort of deals with determined people and breaks their spirit.
What kind of nurse would you like to see if you...
I'm already seeing several...
kind of ambivalent.
Mainly mental health. But, I mean, look, I see Lewis's point about inflation and so on. I suppose if you're a nurse, you're not thinking in a rational reason sense. You're just thinking pay and conditions, I want more money. And, of course, they're going to say they're determined, they're not going to stop because that's a negotiating position. You don't say, yeah, we'll probably fold if they give us half. Or, you know what I mean? So, although the support for the NHS seems to remain amongst, zealous amongst part of the population. Dr. Julia Patterson posted today that would you rather pledge allegiance to the NHS or the monarch? She wants to pledge allegiance to the NHS, and it had thousands of likes. I mean, it's absolutely insane.
Well, we had that. We had people pledging allegiance to it throughout the pandemic, didn't we? Even though our own lives came to a juddering halt because they were unable to cope.
Right. Yeah. It destroyed the economy, the country, which caused the inflation. Which maybe
not that it was the fault of the nurses, of course. We should
something,
but
because
it is true.
I think we need nurses. I don't think we need doctors. I think 90% of the doctors can be gone. I actually
controversial.
I mean, that's a hyperbole, but there's an element of truth. I tell you what, in 30 years' time, it will be the nurses and the caregivers. Broadly speaking, will still be there, but the doctors will have been replaced
with AI.
By AI, yeah.
You think so?
Yeah. Diagnosis will be very much a question of your blood will be taken immediate.
The counter to that is we did an article the other day that 70-something% preferred the AI's bedside manner because it was more caring.
Yeah.
So perhaps the surgeon will remain because it's very complicated, and perhaps the AIs will be the carers.
I tell you, we used to live next door to a care home in Hove when we first moved down there, and you could hear the operatives out in the back garden having a fag and a cup of tea, and the way they spoke about the patients and the general kind of vibe. I would rather be looked after by AI.
Yeah.
As it gets remotely comparable to, you know, all it needs to be able to do is dab your forehead as well. Certainly it's conversation.
But everybody complains about the people they have to care for. Waiters hate the customers.
I hated my children. You're quite right. Nick, north of the border in the Telegraph, the SNP are taking their own cherry off stage.
Yeah, this is terrible. Feminist MP no platform by Edinburgh Fringe Comedy Club over agenda-critical views. It's Joanna Cherry of the SNP. And the Stand Comedy Club said their staff were not comfortable, and so a show or a talk was cancelled. And it's not surprising if you know the comedy world. The Stand is extremely left-wing. It's an SNP club. The owner is an MP.
Yes, this is Tommy, right, who's SNP, and then Joanna Cherry herself is SNP.
But so it's the two factions of the SNP, yeah. Well, they've got the Kate Forbes people, haven't they? They've got various factions, and then they've got the radical gender nut side like Sturgeon, and so it's I mean, Leo was posting that it's a factional war within the SNP. So this Bethany Black trans comedian cancelled her show. It says I don't know which gender they are in some sort of protest. And of course,
whatever the opposite of solidarity is.
Yes, exactly that. And Joanna Cherry is saying it's absolute nonsense. She's saying it's a new form of McCarthyism, where any lesbian or feminist who doesn't subscribe to gender identity ideology is losing the ability to have a public platform, and in some cases their ability to make a living. Now, the only flaw there is that McCarthyism was right, because there were communists throughout the US, especially in Hollywood. But I see her point. There were reds on the bed, but I see the point.
You want something? I'm totally offended by this. There can be no comparison with McCarthyism, because that was the worst type of this type of thing ever, and there can be no. I'm making an ironic
What we
joke.
got with McCarthyism, though, I mean, apart from the irony, we also got some great movies. There was some great music. There were some great books. The paranoia actually kind of unleashed a tidal wave of creativity. You know, half of the great sci-fi movies, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, that was kind of supposed to be
it all
parable,
came out of
wasn't it,
that.
for all of that, you know. Whereas this trans thing is producing nothing. There's not been a single decent episode of EastEnders out of it.
It hasn't come. I just want to say that I was kidding about the whole thing.
I get it.
And you like McCarthyism?
It was in reference to an earlier situation.
Yeah, I didn't get it, but it's good you explained it.
People who watch it regularly.
About Diane Abbott or...
just say the death of love and you'll get away with it.
Staying with the Telegraph, Lewis, and it sounds like they're enjoying holding the Guardian's feature the fine on this one a little bit.
Well, this should be Josh's story, really, because it's all yours, because you've become a whatever.
Yeah, it's true.
It's true. I should ask you how you feel.
I was so offended.
You've become a whatever. See, I'm not allowed to say that, Lewis, but you can say that.
Well, I don't know what to call it. I don't know. But ever since that happened, I've just noticed. Like the way you're sitting
What are you noticing? I don't know.
It's a non-story.
I've actually counselled quite a few of my my half brothers and sisters on this in the Jewish family, and also just Jewish friends, because most of my best friends are Jewish, let alone some. Not many of them are offended by this cartoon. What did you think? I don't know. I find all his cartoons offensive. They're all hideous. They're all disgusting and degrading and dehumanising. This one didn't seem to be particularly bad. I mean, compared to the great fat figure of Johnson sitting on a pile of what appeared to be his own faeces. The fact that Richard Chubb apparently has a Goldman Sachs box in his hands is not the most...
Which is ridiculous, because he did work for Goldman Sachs.
And Rishi Sunak worked for him there.
It's all true.
It is all
a trope, and also happens to be true.
But the fact is that you, because you're only half Jewish, are allowed to only talk about this in half measures, in half terms. So
but on the other hand...
is that so? The story is Jewish leaders want to meet the Guardian editor over anti-Semitic Richard Sharp cartoon. And I looked at this, and that's what cartoons do. It makes people look ugly. They could never do it with me, because I'm so good looking at my age.
We had one, almost the very first programme we did. I think it was, maybe it was somewhere else, where it was Serena Williams, and she had been made to look really grotesque. She'd had a temper tantrum. This might have been another show, I can't remember. She'd had a temper tantrum, and she had broken a racket, and she was cartooned looking like that. People said, oh, you're playing into tropes of black women, being aggressive. And well, she had. I mean, she had absolutely... I mean, it was almost like a still photograph, just kind of slightly teased up a bit. And you absolutely... If it's going to be equality, it has to be equality in those terms as well, I think.
It's a cartoon, but also, this is not good for the Jews.
Right.
and you always say that.
Think in those terms, because that's part of being a Jew, is thinking, is it good?
Well, I was just going to say, look, I obviously hate The Guardian, and the left, of course, can be anti-Semitic. We've all seen it. I have to say, reluctantly, he possibly didn't mean it. He said why he didn't mean to, and it is actually plausible. You look in the box, like Sunak's got like a big nose, but that's something else. That's just generally offensive. Like you say, Boris is painted as an absolute grotesque. So it seems to be in keeping with that. Josh will be screaming at home, like you say, but I think it's plausible that he didn't mean to do it, and it was just a gem. I mean, it's probably an awful cartoon anyway, but not necessarily anti-Semitic on purpose.
There's a sort of squid in the box, which genuinely is a trope. The idea that Jewish power extends its tentacles across the globe like a.
Oh, yes,
but that was a reference to a very specific thing about Goldman Sachs, that it was referred to as having a squid-like grip on.
Yeah, so just very unlucky. I mean,
it kind of is unlucky, but then I suppose how often can you be unlucky before people go?
Well, he may also have awful views, separatists. I mean, people say it's unconscious bias. I find that not quite believable, but he may have awful views. He works for the Guardian. He probably does.
Let's enjoy their discomfort for the time being as it lasts. Anyway, Nick, the Times has distressing story now of students left anxious after being severed from their daemons.
Yeah, this is students with phone separation anxiety risking exam penalties. So off-qual, which I didn't know was a thing, but there's a lot of these off things, aren't there? They said that 50% of candidates were penalised for mobile phone, 50% more candidates than in 2019, sorry.
Yeah.
For basically what they're doing is they're bringing in their phones because they can't be without them. And who can be these days? You feel weird.
Yeah.
They've got them turned off in most cases. They're not trying to cheat, they just can't be without them. And they don't trust putting them in the little box, which is fair enough. But of course, they're getting penalised because you're not allowed them. Now, Chris Rock saw it. He had some kind of thing. He didn't want people to release new material, so he made you put it all in this, like, safe lockup thing.
Oh, yeah.
They should do something like that. I mean, I don't know if they've got the resources.
So but you have it on your desk, but it's inside.
Something like that. Or you put it in a centralised place that's definitely safe. I mean, look, everyone's anxious now if they don't have their phone. There's a certain anxiety of having your phone, like Lewis might call you, for example, but I can understand these students, actually.
I've done it myself sometimes. I even just take out the dog for a walk sometimes, and if I get to the park and I haven't got my phone, I start to feel weird, and that's just in the park.
Yeah, you're checking pockets, you're panicking, you're sweating.
Well, when I make the many films that I'm making, including the new Indiana Jones, which is coming out, look for me there.
Well, you must play his son, right?
Subway scene. I'm watching him get on and off a horse.
No words.
But it is no words.
You're watching a horse.
I'm watching him get on and off a horse. Right. An 80-year-old man about to being killed by the director. Anyway, and they take the phone away from everybody who's working there before.
I was wondering how you're going to make that relevant, and you did it.
I did it, yeah. So I know what it's like not to have a phone.
We've got one more clue we can squeeze in before the break.
Yeah.
This could have been written for you in the Times. Weight loss drug triggers saggy jowls.
Yeah, well, this is what happens when you lose a lot of weight. Yeah. You can either have a nice face. It says weight loss jab, Ozempic, which is Ozempic or Wegovy. There's another name for it.
Yeah, that's right.
Triggers rising demand for cosmetic surgery.
It's an incredible miracle drug.
Well, it's a miracle drug for the first 68 weeks, and then it all comes back, according to the initial studies that were done. It's so early days for this. They don't even know how Ozempic works. Do you know this?
Well, it suppresses appetite, but they don't know how, right? I think it's something to do with the insulin level, is it?
It has to do with insulin level, but it also has to do with some kind of IGP receptor, which is in the pancreas, and the stomach, which controls hunger, but it also is in other parts of the body. I think it's going to be a nightmare. It's so expensive. It's going to cost $9,700 a year in America, and it's going to cost $1,800.
What costs the state that?
Costs someone who's an insurance company that much
Well, I
money.
know you can get it. I read a thing David Aronovich wrote in the Times. He did it, and he said it was about £100 a month. Well, no, that's not dirt cheap. But actually, if that kills your appetite, you will certainly claw that back in terms of reduced growth.
If it came out of your own money, but it's going to come out of the NHS money, and there are 5 million type 2 diabetics. So
but the alternative is they spend months, maybe years, requiring a lot of much more expensive treatment when the metabolic disorder takes hold.
And no, at the end of the day, it's only good for 68 weeks, say.
If that's
true, and they got to take it for the rest of their life.
But I remember that. Do you remember Nigel Lawson? He died recently, of course. Nigella's father. Younger viewers might not know, but he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer. He lost a lot of weight. I think he went on an all-egg diet or something like that, but he lost a load of weight really quickly. He became incredibly, his skin was hanging off him. It was like a weird special effects kind of thing. Did you ever see him? Do you remember that?
No, but that is the problem. You see it with those people who've online who have been massive, then they lose it all, and it's like a great celebration, but their skin's all hanging down. I don't know. I might risk it though, because my skin's quite good, but I do need to lose. As Lewis points out, I am fat, so maybe I'll risk Ozempic face.
You are not fat.
The skin is nice and elastic still. That is all.
Why did he say this? It makes me
just a joke to end on.
It makes me look bad, like I'm mean to Nick.
No, God forbid.
About AI reading minds, trans cyclists claiming awards, and lesbian women of colour, or maybe not. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us 4, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, Nick. We start the third quarter with a story in The Guardian that is both hideously disturbing and great news for the fat-thumbed community.
Yeah, this is AI makes non-invasive mind reading possible by turning thoughts into text. So I didn't realise we'd already reached the invasive mind reading stage. Yeah. I don't know, I feel like I've been in a coma. I thought we were still working on actual mind reading. We're already at the consent issue.
Yeah.
So
you can do it. If you've got the thing in your brain, you can type now with your brain. Or
you can type with your brain. So it's an AI-based decoder. And the problem had always been that they're using fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, and there was always a time lag between the thoughts and the tracking. It was very complicated. There's a 10-second time lag, but they got rid of that by using numbers instead of to represent the semantic meaning of speech rather than the specific words.
Right.
So that sped the whole thing up. So you think something and it comes out with broadly what it is. So they made people listen to podcasts for 16 hours with a scanner. Hopefully my podcast, Weekly Skeptic, or the current thing. But they also made them. They listen to a new story. This is quite shocking. They listen to a story and they imagine telling the story, and about half the time the text closely and sometimes precisely match the intended meanings of the original words.
Yeah.
So it's all a bit complicated, but basically, yeah,
what it reminded me of, if I've grasped it correctly, is a little bit like early sound recordings. So you would like music creates a series of vibrations in a stylus, which leaves a track in a record. And then when you want to play that record, you just reverse the process. So the vibrations in the record are picked up by the stylus and come out through the speaker, which is where the microphone was the first time. Do you see what I mean?
That's just made me more confused. Your analogy's not helped.
Well, they look at what the brain it looks like when it's listening to something.
Okay.
And then when the brain repeats that story itself, the AI understands what the brain looks
the pattern.
like and translates that.
It's something like that, but it's done with numbers instead of words. But one thing is interesting is that it struggled with pronouns, probably because woke programmers have confused it. That's my theory. But there's a funny bit here. It says we take very seriously the concerns that it could be used for bad purposes. I'm sure, sounds fine. I can't see any problems there.
It is incredible, though, and it will definitely have an impact on understanding what language is itself, I think.
Yeah.
Because that's always being changed.
Yeah, the people out there are wondering, I wonder what Louis Schaefer's take on this.
Go ahead.
And I have no clue. I'm not smart enough to understand
Maybe
this
we
stuff.
could rig you up to one of these machines and it turns out you have some articulate thoughts.
You know what? You know what? I would take that as an insult. I'm going to play along like everything's fine.
Well, this one may be more in your wheelhouse, Lewis. A blast from the past, really. A transgender cyclist story. This is a bit 2022, if you ask me.
I know, unbelievable. It's transgender cyclist Austin Killips. He wins the Tour de Gila. Which is a river in a city in Arizona.
And a monster as well. There is a Gila monster.
Did they call it the Gila monster?
Yeah, a little lizard,
yeah. And next stop, the Olympics. And so this
Gila.
I don't know what to say. This
Gila,
guy...
He's still got a male name. It's a bloke, isn't it, with earrings?
Austin. No, Austin could be a girl's name. It could be a very hip girl's name, Austin. And in this country, it's a boy's name.
Wasn't that the $6 million man, Austin?
Stephen Austin, yes.
Stephen Austin.
Yeah,
so
it's
kind of appropriate, isn't it?
So he decides to enter into this bicycle race in Arizona, and he became the top winning girl, and he won 8,800, and he's off for the Olympics.
And somebody says they got more than 50 transgender women in the sport now.
This is shocking. This is
with them. It's infested.
This is a bloke who he didn't even take up.
Can I just stop? You have to apologise for
go
that.
ahead,
You're
Nick.
the host. You should tell yourself.
Just let Nick speak.
Well, it's this guy. He didn't even take up cycling until 2019. So it's great news for men everywhere. If they want to have a pop at cycling, they can just start now. You'll be a champion in 4 years.
Kids through school.
More to the point, he was seen pushing Hannah Arendsman, who actually retired because of it, because she came second to him. And there's a video of him. You can watch it. He nudges her. She tries to get past, and they're off their bikes walking, and he nudges her. And he denies this. And she said this is why she quit the sport. So I'm amazed that everyone doesn't just boycott this stuff. I mean, it's absolutely appalling.
I think it must surely be a kind of a lag, because generally speaking, the governing bodies of all the major sports have decided to man up on this one, haven't they? I thought
great choice of words there. Yeah.
Daily Star now, Nick.
He did that deliberately.
If this is what passes for racism in football commentary, now I say bring back Ron Atkinson.
Yeah, this is pathetic. So Martin Tyler urged to retire by idiots on Twitter. That's my little comment. After racist comment about Son Heung-min. So Son, who plays for Tottenham, he did a foul, and Martin Tyler said it was like martial arts. And everyone says this is racist now, and there's all sorts of tweets saying he has to be sacked, which is ridiculous, because any football fan knows that Cantona, one of the great players of all time, for the greatest team of all time, kicked a Crystal Palace fan. 1995, it was called the Kung Fu kick.
Yeah.
You
can
type it in, it still auto-completes as Kung Fu. He was French. There is no racial dimension to it.
Kung Fu frog, was he?
No.
That never came up.
It's not racial.
Apologise for that.
As a commentator, you're saying loads of things. Things come out your mouth. You say martial arts. There's no racial intent at all. Pathetic.
But he's 77. So they assume this is some kind of age problem. But basically, it's the young in this world, young eating the old.
Yeah.
And because they want his job, the young people. And the other thing that's amazing is, like, they ask him to retire. It's so British. I'm giving the American perspective on this country. You're always asking people to retire. It's never like he should be fired. We should kick that guy out. He should lay down on his own sword.
Pearl-handled revolver. I think you're absolutely right, though, Lewis, that what it is it's like intersexual competition, as it were, isn't it? It's this kind of idea that if you can undermine them, if you can delegitimise them in any way, by any means possible, get them off the end. Because, I mean, I have to have some sympathy as well. I don't know. Obviously, it hasn't come from them, but should a 77-year-old be commentating? Maybe he's an absolute genius. But
you
in most jobs, you would kind of move out of the way, wouldn't you, by 77 and
I don't know. He's a good commentator. I think he should stay.
Fair enough. Yeah. It's not my cup of tea, so I wouldn't know. Trolling news now, Lewis, in the Daily Mail. This guy's giving Pocahontas a run for it.
Well, this is a big story. There was a story similar to this. A white Indiana, which is in between Chicago and New York, or Ohio, if you want to be more specific, has proclaimed himself a woman of color. And he's a white councilman in Indiana, in Delaware County, and he's calling himself a lesbian because he likes women. And the news article calls it a farce. Yeah. That the Daily Mail says it's a farce, even though we don't know it's a farce. How does the Daily Mail know it's a farce? He hasn't admitted it's a farce. It probably is a farce, but it is not
officially a farce.
Officially a farce.
I see he's angered up. There are pictures in the Daily Mail of more ordinary, I guess, central casting lesbians.
Yeah.
Looking quite angry that they're mocked in this.
Well, he put a winking emoji and stuff, but he's an absolute legend, this guy. Yeah, they can't prove he's insincere. Under their own rules, they can't really do anything. He's really funny. He says that he's now the first lesbian of colour. What does he say? The first lesbian woman of colour in the history of Delaware County to ever serve on Delaware County Council. I'm honoured to be the one that shatters that glass ceiling. So that's hilarious. And he also says at the end that the process of identity exploration is complex, and often at the end of our personal journey, we end up right back where we started. So he's given himself an out to just stay as himself.
But you know, it's amazing.
Genius.
It's not in this article because I did a little research. He's now dating the woodwork teacher with the huge bazooms from Canada.
Maybe. Inclusive language now, Nick, or Nicola possibly, with the Daily Mail sharing the latest taboos at Google HQ.
Oh, yeah, another one of these woke word stories. So woke Google bosses ban staff from using terms including man hours, you guys, blacklist and chubby in inclusive language dossier. And weirdly, they've also banned black hole. I mean, seems quite strange.
Yeah. Seriously?
Yeah. And what's funny is that the Google employee told the newspaper that staff had ignored the guide and focused on getting on with their jobs, which is what you hope. I mean, there was a time when everyone laughed at corporate speak and PC stuff. Now, of course, with wokeness, it's taken on all new levels of insanity. But I do hope that people will just ignore this and move on.
If it was coming from the floor of Sainsbury's or Asda or something, you would just kind of go, oh, they haven't got... But, like, Google is the most... It's like absolutely at the frontiers of AI, the large language learning, all this kind of stuff, They are absolutely redrawing the map of what humans might be capable of. And also they are...
Morons, ideological idiots.
Ideologues, it's a bit of a paradox, isn't it?
I know, they also wanted to get rid of housewife and replace it with stay-at-home spouse. I mean...
Yeah. But you know what? There's always been change in language. I mean, we don't talk in Shakespearean.
Well, this is the interesting thing. Well, it's interesting, but it is the difference between grassroots and what do they call it? Astroturfing, isn't it? I think you're right. When slang, and it's a contested territory, of course. There are people trying to change the meaning of words or introduce new words. But it's when it comes from in a memo form that it just kind of sets the hackles up.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it for part 3. But coming up in the final section, farmers fighting against veganism, opportunist cats, and why a couple was shocked when they found out their home wasn't theirs after all. See you in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. For one final section, Lewis, we kick off with The Guardian, and someone has slipped up on a banana.
Yeah, well, I always get the food stories.
Yeah.
But according to The Guardian, and the banana, I can't sound like an Englishman. Banana. I don't even know how to pronounce the word now. I've been living here so long.
Let's call the whole thing off.
This hungry South Korean student eats a £120,000 artwork. There's an artwork in Korea by this Italian guy where he sticks bananas on a wall, and some kid walks by, he's a young kid, and he ate the banana on the wall because the banana was the artwork, and he thought it would be funny and possibly his own art. And then after he ate the banana, he stuck the
skin back
up, which is really horrific because basically not 100 miles away is North Korea, where people would die for a banana.
Like a banana. Maybe that was the point of the artwork, but now an incredibly valuable artifact has been lost. Actually, they replace it every 3 days anyway.
They replace it anyway, and it's one of these things where if the banana's art, then why can't this be art? And the artist doesn't seem to mind either. Yeah. And this all started with Duchamp with his urinal. It's all been downhill from there. Yeah. Everything can be art. The stupid bananas are eating. We need to get back to Roger Scruton, why beauty matters, the inherent beauty of art. This is all an attack on beauty, an attack on God, an attack on reality.
It's not even inventive. The apple rotting in a gallery, just an apple sitting on a plinth. That was Yoko Ono. That was the thing that John Lennon first saw that made him interested in what she was. And that was like, what was that? That's 55, 60 years ago.
It's all diminishing returns after the urinal. You've made the idea, you've made the point, we don't need to do it. It's basically an investment scam now, art, anyway.
Well, but you're saying that...
Go ahead, Lewis, yeah.
Well, we're talking what is art, and if people in this world can't figure out what is a woman, how can we know what art is?
I think, you know what, it's not entirely separate. I think to some extent it has the whole conversation has been about the extent to which man's capacity to create or find meaning in himself is being gradually eroded by technology and reproduction and mass marketing and consumerism and so on. That has overtaken any attempt to actually create beauty. And it is very similar to the idea that you can just change sex if you want to, because everything just is...
Yeah, they would say beauty is just everything's subjective, but of course it's not.
No, it's not. Absolutely. You know it when you see it, Nick. Militant vegans in the Times. Où sont les pommes fritères d'antan? Huh?
No idea, but yeah, this is so farmers fight back against plant-based school dinners. I assume you're referring to, yeah. And this is
where are the spam fritters of our youth?
Right. So local authorities are going vegan, and it's terrible, and it's bad for the farmers, also bad for the children because they'll all be malnourished. Or is it? Oh yeah, it's children at school dinners. So it's terrible. It's something like 9 councils are going full vegan. And never go full vegan.
We all know what vegan school dinners... I mean, my daughter went through vegan phases, and they all looked exactly the same. Crisps, chips, like the most basic carbs. There was never anything inventive with, like, a mix of grains and you know, rare fruits and the rainbow and all the rest.
Well, that's called dirty vegan.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm not even... Because you know me, I'm a carnivore. I eat only meat and eggs and have done so. Today is the 4th anniversary of me eating only meat and eggs and cheese.
Staying alive.
And I look amazing. I look amazing. That's why I'm not worried about any story that has to do with veganism. Because
they're your ultimate enemies.
They're not even enemies. They're going to die. They're killing themselves.
There's another one where we'll dispatch it with equal haste. And vegan outrages, a case for banning these ones from social media entirely, I would think.
Yeah, well, this is a story about how a vegan activist, which they're all activists. You got to be an activist to be a vegan. Tried to ruin my business by posting fake reviews. Chef hits out at one-star feedback left by customers who would repeatedly criticize restaurant on social media despite having never visited. Okay, which sounds like, oh, that's horrible. So what the government wants to do is, this is part of the online safety bill. So it's one more excuse, when the truth is there are enough laws to stop this from happening.
Well, the government, yeah, they want to stop that, which might be one of the few good uses of the online safety bill. But this is the Venn diagram of everything that infuriates me. Since I grew up in a restaurant, my parents ran a restaurant, right? People can just leave horrible reviews. Even if they were real customers, they often lie. But this is someone who wasn't even a customer leaving horrible activist reviews. Absolutely disgusting.
There was one in Kensington High Street that I've been to a couple of times, and he's a friend, the guy who runs it. He hosted a charity auction, which J.K. Rowling and a few other, gender-critical people were at, and was subsequently bombed with negative reviews from.
Right, and that's why we need and that's why I demand an online
Here we go.
safety. I demand for the people who are going to write horrible things about me, and people
it's just his own name.
I thought
it was going to be some meat or something.
Here is my @Louis Schaefer on Twitter. The point is, there's a very easy. No one can see this thing.
No, Nick, Daily Mail. This is a curious puzzle for the legal experts and a good laugh for the rest of us who haven't seen decent sunshine in a couple of months.
Yeah, this is a shocked couple who were forced to move out of their dream home. They bought an auction and they lived in it for 5 years, and then they found out it wasn't theirs. And of course, this is in Australia. And basically, they thought they bought the house at an auction. It turns out the signature had been forged. Someone had put the house as a guarantee and then defaulted on the loan.
Yeah.
And forged this person's signature. So now that person sort of countersued.
So they hadn't defaulted, in fact. It just made it look as if it was, and it came up for auction because it appeared to have defaulted.
Yeah.
Because the person who used their signature to use the house again had done so. So now this person hit back, and then now they're apparently going to get 2.7 million in compensation, or at least that's been ordered by a Supreme Court. But yeah, they're fighting. They've spent a huge amount in legal fees. The other person thinks it's still their house. I don't know. This is why I might go back to renting.
When we first moved down to Brighton,
I am
renting in a place. A house sale we were hopeful fell through, but that wasn't legally problematic. We rented a place, and then that turned out to no longer belong to the guy who was renting it to us. That had been foreclosed on, and we started getting letters from his bank telling us that our contract was worth nothing, and we had paid rent to him, and we had paid a deposit. It's a nightmare, you've got to check up on these.
This is not only in Australia. This is so common, and there's something called insurance, buyer's insurance, renter's insurance, that will cover this. I don't even know. To me, this sounds like a non-story.
There it is. Well, I tried to explain it well, but you were messing around with your thing, and Simon was staring at it, and it was all very complicated.
I love my thing.
Finally, Slinky Malinky is on the prowl again in Express, Lewis.
Well, this is fine. This is a real story. That some cat. I couldn't find out where the cat was. Where was the cat? I don't know where the cat was.
In Derby.
In Derby. Was it in Derby?
Yeah, in Darley Abbey.
In Derby. Oh, Derby. This was so alliterative. Derby Abbey.
Derby, if that helps you.
Derby. So some cat goes out every day and steals designer shoes from neighbours, where the designer shoes are. But he goes wandering around. He brings them home to Mrs. Hibbert, which is the cat.
I was trying to remember. My daughter had a storybook. It was called Slinky Malinky, as I referenced.
Yeah.
I eventually found it. But I went on to Google to try. What was the name about the cat, the children's book with the cat that steals?
Felix?
It's like a huge genre. There are dozens of these books about cats that steal things.
Yeah, I thought it was Felix. Or there's Garfield. But hang on. It says over the past 4 years, right, the cat's made off with more than £300 worth of items, and it's saying designer shoes. They're not designer shoes. If it's up to £300 total, they're not that designer, are they?
Well, I guess,
4 years, all the items are 300.
Pretty steep.
And it's not a pair of designer shoes. It's one
Let's
shoe.
take a look now. The show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages. The Daily Mail, Britain's rock-solid support for the Royals. They assert the iNews have this can't go on. NHS leaders in despair. A strike stalemate hits care backlogs. The Guardian Home Office to acquire fleet of ships to house asylum seekers. The Times call for top civil servant to go amid worst crisis. The Express have ignoring plea for life and limb care just not on. And finally, the Daily Star, E.T. phone David Attenborough to make contact with aliens. Those were your front pages. That's all we have time for. Thank you very much to my guests, Lewis Schaefer and Nick Dixon, both of
I didn't call you fat.
We're
You
back
did,
tomorrow at 11 p.m. when I will be joined by Leo Kurz and Roger Monkhouse. Thank you.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
evening. We're just a few days away from the coronation, a truly historic event. There hasn't been one since 1953. For many people, this literally is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And we, as a channel here at GB News, are very excited about the few days that are coming up. But what about the history and origins of this ceremony? Well, the Crown, a 1,000-year history, is about to be shown to you, and it's produced and told by who other than David Starkey.
In 1953, I watched the coronation of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II as an 8-year-old boy on our neighbour's newly bought TV. Now, 70 years on,